Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I would like to welcome to our consulate JT. I met JT on Facebook after I ran into his book online, so I thought, let me introduce him to you guys and we can have a chat and find out what it's like to be an atheist where he lives, amongst other things. Welcome, JT.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, let's jump headlong into it. I'm always fascinated to find out what is it like living as an atheist where people are. Because it differs so vastly from area to area on the globe. Some countries atheists aren't even allowed to exist, and in other places they're stigmatized and persecuted. So what is it like where you are living?
So yeah, and it's a great point you make. In fact, in some places it's damn near impossible to even find atheists because A, we're such a great minority, and B, there's a lot of places where you can't even openly admit it, or else it's very dangerous. Being in the States is very interesting because on the surface, we pretend like we really value secular values and it's an important thing to us. But when you really kind of scratch down even a few layers beneath that surface, you can see that, we are just as religious and, stigmatizing of atheism as plenty of other countries that are just as developed, if not more developed than us.
Yeah.
And I grew up in the South, in South Carolina, and it's actually probably 10, 15 times harder in the South for an atheist than it is in the rest of the United States.
Yeah.
So I've definitely felt the burn.
Yeah. How was your atheism received in your community with your family and your friends?
It was a very rough journey, and I always remind myself that I can understand their harsh reaction. I did not make it easy on them whatsoever because for the vast majority of my life, I was on their side. I was a very, very devout Christian. The sect that I was a part of is called a Southern Baptist, and it's very evangelical. There's people there that, every single word of the Bible is perfect. It's all true. It all really happened. Noah survived being swallowed by a whale. The earth was flooded and a boat, carried two of every animal that's on earth now. They believe all that very deeply. And I drank that Kool-Aid is the way I put it. And so I spent many years being on their side, talking about those things, being very outspoken in that direction.
Yeah.
And then went through a lot of life changes, went through a divorce and a remarriage and a bunch of other things. And it sort of forced me to look at, how did I get myself into this place?
Yeah.
And I realized that it was that filter that the religion had put over reality. And so then I started kind of coming out of that hole and climbing out of the shadows. And as soon as I did, all that passion that I had towards those beliefs just transitioned right towards the opposite end of the fence.
Yeah.
And so I made it very hard on them. It was basically like I completely changed. I was a completely different version. And so it was very hard to accept me and my new thoughts, my new lifestyle. So I can't blame them, but I have to tell you, it was very difficult, especially with family. It was hard to communicate with them for a long time. What's interesting about whenever you're that religious and you're that ingrained is that it really permeates through every fabric of life. And it gets to the point where you can't even have dinner with your family without, a prayer coming up or something. And so it's like everything you try to do, it's just always that barrier. It's like that hard wall that's between you.
Yeah.
So I definitely went a long time with strained communications and trying my damnedest to overcome it. And I can finally say I've come through out of that, and I'm in a better place now. And for the most part, people just learn to accept me, and it's just like politics. If you don't want to get angry, you just don't bring it up. So
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I went through more or less the same thing with I also have a very, very devoutly religious section of my family, and we also had to come to that impasse where we said, look, our relationship and our bond as family is more important than this particular aspect of our lives, so if we value that relationship more than we value this disagreement that we have, then let's just agree to disagree and not to talk about it.
That's a great strategy.
Yeah, I mean, there was this passive aggressive period where I was being sent all these little Bible verse memes and and things, that sickly saccharine bit of Christian condescension that they throw at you.
Yes, I do. Actually, as an example, I still get cards from family members and they have, like pieces of scripture and stuff on the customized, address label has like scripture on it and different things like that. So it never ends.
Yeah. But, it's very interesting that you mentioned this because this also only dawned on me a couple of steps down the road, is that the variable that's changed is me. I am the person that's changed, so I cannot, expect expect them to change as well with me, so
Exactly.
it's a very, very valuable insight that you have there because, my family, I sort of like came to this acceptance that they're not going to change, and no matter how I go about it, like I am the person that's changed my view, so I'm obviously going to have to work, within that framework, to familiarize myself with a relationship that's changed, with a family dynamic that's changed. Because my family, they believe I am working for Satan and I'm getting my paycheck and my suite is reserved in the upper level of hell.
I hear you. Yeah, it's actually interesting. I learned a lesson from religion that kind of helps me in that aspect, and it's the old cliche that you love the sinner, hate the sins. Except now for me, it's love the person, hate the religion, and just kind of try to, keep that same sort of mindset. And sometimes it's way easier than others, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, there's this common thread, amongst atheists where we, no matter how different the story is, like there's always this common thread of people want to continue the relationships that they have. It's not like, okay, sure, this aspect of me has changed, but I am still the person that I'm still the person that you've known your entire life, or that you've gone to school with, or the person that, was at your child's wedding. Like I'm still the same person. There's only this one aspect of me that's changed. And, the similarities, even though you have different events and different circumstances in atheists' lives. I mean, I've spoken to ex-Muslims, ex-Christians, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-Mormons, and it's striking how it's, there's a very similar theme that runs through the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And, let's talk a little bit about your journey away from religion, because what I found is that, every single atheist has a different thing, like there's a linchpin somewhere along the line that gets pulled and the wheel comes off, and, maybe just talk us through your journey. And, I'm sure with, I can say a Southern Baptist background, that must have been a linchpin that brought
for sure. Whole. Right, and to put it biblically, it's the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? Well, what was interesting for me is that it was sort of like a slow, gradual process, and then it kind of spiked. And so what it really started as is having trouble with prayer. And the reason I had trouble with prayer is that there's this obvious logical problem with prayer, that you're going to the person that knows all, does all, sees all, and is perfect and already has a perfect plan. And then you're asking him to do anything for you. And to me, it just didn't make any sense. It's like, hello, Father that knows what's best for me. Can you do this instead of what you were planning on doing?
It's like some weird S&M kink, you know, like God likes to hear people beg, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the only way that I can think about it.
And so for years, actually, I was praying this way, where I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to be arrogant enough to try to ask God for anything, because he's got his plan. He's way smarter than me, apparently. So, you know, what's the point? And so all my prayers just got really weird, and they were more like asking for forgiveness, asking to help others. And then after a while, even that all just felt weird. I was like, you know, if he knows my head and my heart, what's the point in having this conversation except just to placate myself, basically?
Yeah.
And so then the prayer kind of stopped. And once prayer stops, you're left with just the story that we have of God, which is the Bible. And then when you really devote yourself to the Bible, you know, there's a Penn Jillette quote. I don't know if you know him. He says the fastest way to make an atheist is to have them read the Bible. Yeah, and so whenever I had trouble praying, I read the Bible cover to cover. Like, I truly devoted myself to understanding it. And 9 times out of 10, every new thing I read just presented more and more problems. And then, you know, I was left in this weird spot where, hey, maybe I'm a deist. Maybe I still believe that something created us all, but this Bible thing just seems like bullshit. Mm-hmm. And then I had some personal things that happened in my life. You know, I went through a divorce. I went through a remarriage, just kind of went through some struggles. And that just made me think, you know, this whole religion thing is actually what caused me to sort of make these mistakes in my life. And so at that point, I was like, I can't pray. The Bible is awful. And actually adhering to these principles and practices has brought torment to me rather than joy. And so that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, was, you know, after the baseline was already kind of starting to crack and crumble, you know, my tough journey through life is what just kind of knocked the whole thing over.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, they say that the road to atheism is made from deist stones. You know, so that's usually I mean, it's a very common thread where you struggle to reconcile what you have internalized from your religion, and then discard it bits by bits. You know, so that was very similar for me. You know, like I couldn't buy into any of it. After a while, you know, like you say, the most potent force for creating atheists is a thorough study of the book. But, you know, as I started letting go of certain aspects of it, it became watered down. You know, it became very watered down and bland. And then after a while, I realized there comes a point where you just ask yourself, like, why do I actually believe this? Not what do I believe, but why do I believe it? You know, and you know, it's a very striking, you know, it's like one of those aha moments in life where you realize, like, hey, fuck, I don't actually have a good reason to hang on to this. You know, it's you know, and you say, you ask yourself, like, how would my life be any different without it? And you realize my life will be exactly the same. You know, it's just this one aspect that you free your mind from. You know, like I can't remember who said it, but they sort of like called religion mind forged manacles. You know, so it's like it's something that you build to imprison yourself. And I love to you know, to see you know, like these new, you know, when someone is just an atheist, they come with you know, like, it's almost like you lit a powder keg, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
They just go off. You know, like they go through these phases. You know, first they are furious,
right?
Furious. And rightly so. You know, but they're furious at having been conned and lied to, and suckered into something for so long. And then it goes through different evolutions. Some people become very apathetic and indifferent to religion. Other people become quite vitriolic, and some people like me. I just want to like shake the whole world and wake them up. It's very
exactly. Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah. And that's the next thing that I want to move into is just like the culture of religion is so insidious in the way that it's crept into society. It's like, but for me, it's they always have these. They stand on the hilltops and look at all the good we do. We've got all these orphanages. Look at how we save. Go to Africa. Don't talk about Africa and religion. It's a very touchy subject for me.
Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine. I would place bets though that Bill Gates has done more for Africa than any religion ever has.
Yeah.
So.
But we never actually like look at it critically and say like, what is the harm? Like it actually does a lot of harm on a systemic level. Where people they get into this mindset where firstly they don't take responsibility for their own actions. Because they can just ask for forgiveness afterwards. They completely disregard the rights of smaller groups of people within their society, women, people of different orientations, people, sometimes even people of different races are treated very poorly with religion as the justification. And, it's understandable. But in a civilized first world country, like, do you experience any kind of impact that, religion has in that sense, where it creates in groups and out groups, and it causes people to discriminate against one another?
Oh, for sure. I would say the biggest problem stateside is that religion has a stranglehold on politics.
Yeah.
Because there are so many people that are very religious in the United States. I mean, I think the percentage of people that claim no religion is like 15% or something ridiculously low here. Mm-hmm. And those people vote, right? And so politicians know that the only way they're going to get support and be able to get into office is if they pander to the religious population. And so it has a very strong silent hold on the lawmaking process and legislation in general in this country. And in fact, there's lots of different surveys that people have done about would you vote for a president if? And if you ask damn near any question, Americans seem to be just fine with voting with any kind of minority, a female, like all that stuff is okay. If you ask them if they're going to vote for an atheist, they say, hell no, it's just not going to happen. And so that voice never really gets represented. I always say it's one of the few minorities out there that people aren't waving a flag for. Let's put it that way. You have to be an atheist to want to support atheists. It doesn't seem to work that way with any other, culture or group. Like, plenty of people support LGBTQ rights and they go to pride parades and they wave rainbow flags and they've got that sense of community and care and compassion. With atheists, it's kind of like, well, if you're an atheist, you just have to get your hands dirty. Nobody's going to try to support your cause. So.
It's true, but I always find it fascinating. I mentioned this to you before we actually met. Is that I when I first heard about this secular constitution that's free of religion and everything, I just said to myself, like, wow.
And it is.
Look at how it plays out in practice. In practice,
exactly.
It's like Jesus wrote the Constitution himself. The way that they carry on.
Exactly. Yeah. The founding fathers that started this country. Historically, pantheism was about the closest thing they got to any sort of religion, and certainly not theology, certainly not Jesus. None of that was a big value to them, and it doesn't show up in the Constitution whatsoever. But
yeah,
people seem to just, religion has that filter, is the way I always put it. It's like putting on like rose-colored glasses, and it just changes everything. So they read the Constitution and just interject their own biases into every part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is fascinating. Like correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the only mention of religion in your founding documents is that it's mentioned how it should be limited, in its influence. I think that's about the only thing.
Yeah, so there's an amendment to the Constitution that basically says that everybody should have the freedom to express and practice their religion, and that's pretty much the only part that religion is even brought up. There's also a lot of documents leading up to the Constitution that talk about how important it is to separate church and state. Obviously, with the way the United States was formed, being that the king was working with the church and they saw how that shit on society, they were like, let's make sure that we don't have religion and politics mixed again, because then it just, both are ways of controlling people, right? That's what it comes down to. Politics is ways of controlling people. Religion is way of controlling people. And if you put the two together, then you get way too much control, and it's not left to the people.
Exactly.
And so that's kind of how the founding fathers viewed it, is like, let's keep them separate.
Yeah. I mean, looking from the outside, it looks almost like every state has got its own little country. Some states you don't have that strong of a religious influence. People can get abortions, people can smoke pot, and then the further you go down towards the equator, I think the hotter people's heads get.
That's a perfect way of putting it. That pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I actually live in a state where, marijuana is legal.
Right.
And it's much different than, where I grew up, of course.
Right. Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Like I could never visualize a world where I can, go from one end of the country where something is legal and the opposite end of the country it's illegal. We've always had like one law that covers the entire country, but then again, our country is probably smaller than Texas.
Yeah, and we are a republic. That's kind of how it works. Every state has their own system. There's still the God figure that's the central government that kind of controls everything to a certain extent, but states do have their rights here. So I guess the one interesting thing about it is it means that, if one area has some piece of legislation that's very important in your life, then you can always just move and kind of relocate. And I've done that as well. So
no, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't know. I try to approach things as an egalitarian. I want things to be equal everywhere for everybody. Everybody should have the same opportunities, the same laws, the same. That's just my mindset. But it's very interesting. Very interesting to hear. Let's talk a little bit about your book. I have to confess I haven't read the whole thing yet, but I mean I've skimmed.
I don't blame you. It's okay. You mean this thing? Yeah.
I mean, I've had the time. I've had the time in the week leading up to read a couple of chapters. And I mentioned to you as well. It's very seldom that you find someone that has such a it's extremely intimate in the way that you relate your personal journey and I find it very endearing to read. It's not one of those books that are full of these technical, philosophical analyses and all of these. It's like the title says. It's just the journey told. So, what led you to, what made you decide? Okay, I have to write a book about this.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, first off, I just wanted to say, you were talking about the way I wrote it. One of the reviews actually says that I deliver my message as if I was sitting next to you in a dive bar.
Exactly.
And that's sort of what I was going for, is I was just like, hey, I just want to talk to people. There's probably somebody else that's going to benefit from this story. So let me just talk to them as if they're my friend, because they would be my friend if I knew who they were.
Right.
But to actually answer your question, I would almost say that first and foremost, making this thing was therapeutic more than anything. It's like you were saying before, whenever you kind of get into this transition where you evolve past faith and you move towards atheism, it's almost like going through the stages of grief. There's anger, there's denial, there's acceptance, there's bargaining. Like, you go through this whole process. And the one thing that makes it so unique compared to any other grieving or any other kind of process that you go through is that being an atheist means that there's not really anybody else that you can talk to safely. And so to get those ideas out, you start putting them on paper. And that's kind of why the book it's very kind of humble jumbled. It's a lot of random records of thought that, one chapter doesn't necessarily, flow into the next chapter and things like that. And it's simply because I would have something happen and it would make me think about something that religion had cocked up for me. And I had to just get that off my chest. And I would just bust out a chapter of here's what pisses me off and why, or whatever. And what's interesting is you can actually see my process through the book of going from here's my warm, fuzzy feelings about how it was to be raised religious. Here's now how I'm aggravated at religion and feel like I was, duped and I'm pissed off. And then here's me saying, okay, I'm kind of over the anger. Here's kind of what I've learned from it. And hopefully this is what we all can learn from it and be able to move past it. But first and foremost, definitely it was a therapeutic thing for me. It was just, without having a giant atheist community anywhere to actually express these kind of ideas, you write them down to get them off your mind and out of your heart. And then once I had enough written down, I was like, hell, I'm just going to organize this damn thing and make it a book.
Yeah. It's very cathartic, like that whole writing process, because it forces you to sit and go through things systematically. So I can definitely see how that came to be. And what has the reception been, with the book? Like you said, you got some good reviews on it. Have any of your friends, your family read it? What is the general reception that you're getting?
Good question. So as far as reception, I'd have to say that it's what I would expect from pigeonholing myself into such a narrow category. Whenever you're doing anything like a book or any kind of media, even like the Atheist Republic or, the Facebook page that I do and the YouTube, most people try to find a giant population and pander to it so that they get a huge crowd and a huge following. Well, we both have this struggle that we're working with a tiny population because atheism is not huge. But for my population, it has been doing well. I've managed to stay in the top 100 in atheism in the Kindle version on Amazon since it's been published. So I can't complain. I'm happy with that. I definitely didn't write it for the royalties or, just to see how big and awesome it would grow and get. It was, again, more A, a therapeutic thing for myself, and then B, realizing that if it was therapeutic for me, then it would probably be therapeutic for anybody else in that position. And so that was the main reason I decided to actually publish it, is just to see if it can help anybody else through their transition. So
right. So we actually have to hope that you go through another bit of anguish and strife in your life so that you can write a second book about something.
Well, I'll be honest. I self-published this one, including self-editing, and those two words never go together. So
Yeah.
the book's pretty, it's just not very neat. And so I
Yeah.
have definitely already started kicking around the idea of doing a revised second edition where I'm just tidying it up some. I'd like to add, some extra pieces and put in like a foreword, and I want to do links to, my YouTube and my Facebook, and sort of have the book be kind of intertwined so that I can have conversations with people that are reading it and, want to express things to me. So,
yeah. Well, what strikes me is just, you mentioned this earlier as well, is just that, that idea of isolation, like when you discard faith and, come to your senses, so to say, is you definitely lose a certain aspect of your community. And that is, I think, where the internet has really, struck a blow at religion, because in just a couple of decades ago, religion was the only game in town, when there was bake-offs, when there were sales, when there was something at the church, like that's where communities gathered, and we're a social species. And now that, people are so interconnected and, you can reach someone on the other side of the planet, at the click of a mouse. We're creating our own little communities, like you were saying, that you focus on a very specific segment, of readers. These little bubbles of atheist communities, I think it's so important. In my experience, just being involved in this local community is, you get a sense of solidarity, a sense that you are not alone. You have people who are living in exclusively religious households. They come out as atheists, in a Jehovah's Witness house, and they have nobody to talk to, nobody to relate to. So it's very important that that we create these spaces, especially what you say, just creating these online platforms. It's not that you're doing it, doing it for yourself to become like the Pope of atheism or something. It's to gather like-minded people together and just to create that space where people can express themselves. So yeah, I'm all for community building. But speaking about just being out vocal atheists, this is something that I wanted to just touch on. It's like I get why there is this reluctance for people to express their non-belief, but there was a very interesting talk I heard a couple of years ago. I can't remember who said it, but someone basically equated. I think it might have been Greta Christina or somebody who talked about what atheism can learn from the LGBTQ community. Like where there was also this period of being shunned and pushed away, and like they were vilified, and then the LGBTQ community just came out in full force, and put it in people's faces. And I think atheism is going through that same kind of process in a certain sense, where atheists are no longer keeping quiet. They're becoming more vocal. They're becoming more of an opposition. And, I still understand why some atheists find it difficult to come out, because, the immediate social consequences to that process. Maybe if you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, and for sure, you were absolutely right before that the internet is the great equalizer, right? So people that are worried about, whatever effects they're going to have within their own small community and within their family and friends and all that can basically just shove all those worries aside whenever they go online, because it's really just the great equalizer. And so I do think that the inception of the internet has really started even the possibility for the atheist movement. I think before it was very few and far between people that had the cojones to even speak out for it. But the internet has started that trend. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that, comparing the LGBTQ community is a perfect analogy. I still would say it's still more of a struggle for atheists. I think in many ways it's easier for people to understand the LGBTQ community than it is for them to understand people without faith. And so I still think that there's much more stigma that's involved for us than there are for others. And so I do think that we can learn a lot from the LGBTQ community. I think that they should give us some love as well, because I think that us atheists tend to do a lot in support of them. And I see we scratch each other's backs a lot, and I think I think we're both going to bring ourselves up together.
What's it saying? The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Exactly. Yeah, and in a way, they're just like us. It's religion that's created the problems that they have in society.
Yeah.
So we do definitely share the enemy.
Exactly. I mean, we've talked a little bit about the reception of your book, but just in general, in closing, maybe if you can, just relate to us maybe a positive and not so positive, not necessarily negative, but not so positive experience that you've had because of your apostasy and lack of religion.
Yeah, sure. So, absolutely on the positive level, I think the biggest message that I've gotten out of losing religion, dropping it from my life, is that there's no longer, I have a background in psychology, and there's a term in psychology that's called a locus of control.
Right.
And it's one of the very important things in people being able to overcome struggle, learn things about themselves, and be successful, is that they have to have an internal locus of control, which is basically saying, when anything happens, I have the power to deal with it. It's not someone else's fault. I can't just blame it on them. I have to take what's happening into my own hands and control it. And to me, religion was the antithesis of that. It was always having that external locus of control. There's a father figure up above that I just need to ask for help, or there's a devil that's causing these terrible things to happen in my life, and so the control wasn't on me. And so ditching all that has brought the locus of control onto myself, and that's the most powerful positive thing I can say about this journey from faith to reason. On the negative side, absolutely, just like we said, I had plenty of nights where I went without sleep because I knew that I was disappointing my parents so much, that my family, didn't understand me anymore. And the worst part is that I was empathetic to them, because I had been on that side. And just imagine, I know that we always try to get other people to put themselves in our shoes, but for any atheists out there that have trouble understanding why people get so upset, just imagine for one moment that you do genuinely believe that the people you love more than anyone else on earth are going to face eternal torture because of what they don't believe. And just imagine how awful it makes you feel to worry about your loved ones. And so as much as it aggravated me that that's what they believe, I can't stop them from believing that. And so I still had that empathy, like, wow, they're so worried about me. And, the anger, again, like I was saying before, it's like love the person, hate the religion. And so I had to kind of channel that anger towards the religion rather than the people themselves. But that was definitely the hardest part in the book and in that journey from faith to reason in itself, was, dealing with kind of the wake that I left in the path of my loved ones whenever I broke down these walls.
Yeah, that's very interesting. But it's true. It's interesting that you say, that, like the one of the things that, came up for me especially is this whole idea of empathy. Like we are very keen to I'm very keen. Let me speak for myself. I'm very keen to point to the religious people and like, yeah, look at you. You know, don't you have any empathy for your fellow man? Look at how you judge and you know. So I'm very quick to point that out to them. You know, but then in the same sense, you know, I also have empathy for you know, for religious people. You know, like it's a bit of a catch-22. You know, like if they approach me with sanity and reason, and you know, then they receive it in return, you know, but I'm usually on the receiving end of 6,000 years ago, madman and rib woman in the garden, blah blah blah, repent or burn, you know, like I'm usually on the receiving end of that. And when I'm on the receiving end of that, you know, like the sarcasm and the vitriol obviously bubbles to the top. But it's very interesting, you know. I you know, the humanist within me, you know, like always the red light goes on and says like, you were once there, you know, you were once in that same boat, you were once the same person that were pointing the finger, you know. So it's very interesting. But it's a, you know, it's a very balanced way to view, you know, interpersonal dynamics, you know, like I struggle to do it myself.
Oh, I do too. I can definitely talk about it all day, but practice is completely different. And that's a big part of why I actually started the YouTube channel that I did after the book, is because that's what I'm trying to do with it, is talk to, you know, the believers, talk to the faithful, and just explain myself, show them that I'm not, you know, some evil satanic person with ill intentions, and that, you know, I can be good and I can be moral and, you know, behave justly without the same belief system. And so, you know, and I've got a couple of episodes where I do talk about that, how it's just that one thing that separates us, and that it shouldn't separate us so drastically that we can't still get along. So
exactly. And you know, this is my big issue with you know, most religions, you know, like and you know, like we live in Africa here, you know, like this Africa, when you know, when the Europeans came to Africa, they came with the Bible, you know.
Right. Yeah.
It's like there was this guy called Jomo Kenyatta. He said when the missionaries came to Africa, they came with the Bible. They told us to close our eyes and gave us the Bible. And when we opened our eyes, we had the Bible and they had the land. You know?
Wow, that's perfectly said.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. So you know, it's yeah. I always find it very strange how you know, African culture is inherently spiritual. There's a very deep understanding and a connection to nature, you know, and the natural forces and spirituality, you know. As a European, I don't get it at all, you know, like, but I do recognize it, you know, and so the environment was very, very ripe for the Europeans to come and inject this specific religion in. And I mean, it's taken off by storm. So in Africa, when you label yourself as an atheist, you know, you really get stares, you know, especially in African communities. It's unheard of that a person does not believe in some kind of spirituality. I mean, we've got a general election on Monday, right? There's a political party, the African Christian Democratic Party or something. I mean, like, they don't play, you know, like, they don't play about it, you know. It's like, here it is, you know. This is what we are. It's all about Jesus and blah, 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 blah. It's crazy.
Yeah. And that's sort of what's happened with the Republican Party stateside. And what's most frustrating about it is I'm very open-minded. I'm very centrist. I do my damnedest to kind of erase the tribalism in every aspect of life and say, let me not just think what this group is thinking or what this group is thinking, but instead just actually look objectively at the issue. And I do the same thing with politics. And it's a shame because, you know, there's parts of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party that I agree with, and I'm able to say that. Whereas most Americans say, no, you have to be on our side or you're the enemy. Yeah. But what makes it so unfortunate is that you can't support parts of the Republican Party without also supporting that huge religious aspect that comes along with it. So
I just have to look this up for a second. I just want to find out how many. You guys have got two parties. It's either the one or the other, right? So let me just see quickly how many.
It's not exactly the case, but if you really look at it pragmatically, yes, there are only two parties. There's other parties, but our system basically silences them before they can get on the ticket to be elected. So
as we see elections, yeah, I don't want to lie to you. There is like, it's like 20 or 30. You know, like I can't find the exact number now. It's like you don't really need much to to start a political party. Get yourself on the ballot. People vote for you. Boom, you're in government. You know, like it's a bit of a free fall.
Yeah. And, in a way, I guess I agree. It should be pretty easy. If government is supposed to be, as we say, for the people and by the people, then it should be easy for the people to be a part of it.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
It doesn't work that way, though.
No. I mean, like all you need here is just to get support. We've had like the marijuana party, and we've had seriously. It's crazy. It's crazy what people come up with.
And that's sort of what we talked about before is, when people want to get support, they try to find something a lot of people are going to agree with. And that's like their golden calf, right? They just stand in front of the crowd and say, here's why you like us. And so it definitely works with something like marijuana. It's like, we're going to run our whole party on marijuana because people love marijuana.
People arrive at the polls and they go like, well, why are we here again?
Right. I forgot. When is the election?
Hey, go get the snacks in the car.
Yeah, exactly. They've got orange cheese dust on their beards from eating chips.
Oh man, that's funny. Well, JT, it was very nice meeting you. Thank you so much for your time. I'll post the link to your book in the comments of the video when I post it, and keep fighting the good fight.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was sincere when I said it was definitely an honor for you to want to have a conversation with me, and I definitely appreciate your time and you as well. We're both fighting a hard fight, and the more people we can get on our side, the easier it'll be. So,
excellent. Thank you so much, JT.
Thank you.